Hi, my name is Rebecca from Ingvid.com. In today's lesson, you'll learn about 24 different words to talk about your working life. You'll need these words if you want to be able to talk about your career or about someone else's professional life. So let's get started. I've divided the vocabulary into two parts. On this side, we'll see words which the applicant or the employee, the future employee, is going to need. Things that a person who is applying for a job or someone who works somewhere, these words apply to them. And the words on this side refer to things that the employer does, that the company does. Okay? So let's start with what a person does when he or she is looking for a job. So the first thing is to look for a job. That could mean that you look at classified ads, you go online, you look for a job. Another way to say that is to seek employment. That's a formal way to say it. To seek means to look for, and employment means work or a job. Next, you would probably apply. After you see a position that interests you or a job that interests you, you would apply for that position. You would fill out perhaps an application form or send in a letter and also submit, which means to formally give in or send in, to submit your resume, to submit your CV. CV is curriculum vitae. In some places they say CV, and in other places they say resume. It's the same thing, but you need to apply and submit it. So these are the first three things that someone who's looking for a job or a job applicant is going to do. Let's jump on to this side now to see what the employer does, and then later we'll come back to a couple of other things which the person can do, okay? So what does the employer usually do? After they have gone through the applications, they will invite some people for an interview, and they will interview that person. Next, they'll make a list, that process is called to shortlist. To shortlist means, let's say that they interviewed 20 people, and now they're going to choose about 3 people or 5 people, and from those 5 or 3, they will choose one person, finally, because there's one position available. So when they take out of the 20, they make it 3 or 5. That process is called shortlisting. They shortlist the candidates. So the first thing you can hope after being interviewed is that you will be shortlisted. And then, hopefully, you will also be chosen for the position. So if that happens, the company decides to hire someone or to recruit a new employee, to recruit someone. Both words are used. After that, if necessary, but not always, they may have to train that person to teach them how to do the job. At some later point in their career, it may be also necessary to retrain that person. Anything usually means to do something again. Next, after the person has been hired and perhaps trained, the person will be placed in a particular department, in a branch, in a division, in a particular location. They will be placed there, means they will be put in that position. Next, a variety of things can happen in the course of a person's career. A person could be transferred. You see the arrow? Transfer means your position, the level of your position doesn't change necessarily, but you might be just moved. To transfer means to move to another branch, to another location, to another country, right? Another department, another division. You are transferred. Another thing that can happen, if you're doing very well, is you might be promoted. Here we see the arrow pointing up. So to promote means to get a higher level position. Usually, but not always, that includes a higher salary as well. Then that's referred to as a raise, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you get a higher position without the extra money. what can also happen, but very rarely, but it does happen sometimes, is instead of getting promoted, a person might be demoted. So demoted means to get a lower position. This doesn't usually happen. Sometimes it can happen, for example, in the army. A person might be demoted for something bad that they did. Next, we come to different ways in which a person can be asked to leave work. There are 3 different ways. So let me explain, because the difference is actually very important. A person might be laid off. Another way to say that is to make someone redundant. A person might be laid off or made redundant. I'll explain what that means. A person might be retrenched or dismissed or terminated. Now, let me explain the difference. When companies lay off employees, they don't usually lay off one employee. They lay off a number of employees. Sometimes it could be 100 employees. It could be 1,000 employees. And why does that happen? It has nothing to do with employee performance. It has to do with other reasons. The economy may be bad, or the sales may be down, and so on. And so the company is forced to lay off hundreds of workers, right? So when the company lays off a number of workers, then they are telling them to go, but again, it's only temporarily. Usually it's temporarily. Sometimes if the economy continues to be really bad, it can become permanent. But layoffs are often temporary. Sometimes when things improve, then they may be rehired. So if someone is laid off, it's much easier for that person to get another job. Because if they're fired, for example, then that's going to be more difficult for them to get another job. All right. Now, next one is retrench. When a company retrenches employees, it's similar to the layoff, but it's for different reasons. Retrenchment happens when a company is trying to restructure itself, reorganize its finances. And so it may decide to reduce expenses in a number of different ways. Sometimes it does it by shortening working hours, by lowering salaries. And finally, if they have no choice and no other way to save enough money, they may actually ask employees to go. So those employees would then be retrenched. Again, it doesn't usually happen to just one person at all. It happens to many people, maybe hundreds. So layoffs and retrenchments are similar, except that retrenchment is often looked at technically as more permanent. And layoffs, as I mentioned, might be temporary. The next situation is number 11 here is a person could be dismissed or terminated. And what does that mean? Okay, that means something quite different from being laid off. Because when you're laid off, as I said, it's not your fault. But if you're dismissed or terminated, it may be because the company is specifically unhappy with that person's performance, or that person is perpetually late, or that person's work is not up to standard, and so on, right? So the company dismisses that particular person. The official word for that is to be dismissed or to be terminated. The slang for that is to be fired or sacked. In North America, the slang is to be fired. In England, the slang tends to be sacked. All right? So that's what can happen from the employer's point of view. Let's go back for a minute and talk about a few other things that the employee can do. Sometimes you may get a better job, and so you decide to leave the company where you work and go to another company. So you resign. This is something you do by yourself. You decide to resign. The slang for that is to quit. I quit. The famous words. So if you decide to resign, you will probably submit a letter of resignation. All right? That goes with resigning. And the last thing that an employee usually does, it depends on what age in different countries, is to retire. So what does it mean to retire? To retire means to stop working because you've reached an age when legally you are forced to stop working. And the age varies in different countries, but it can be anywhere from 60 to 65 in most places. All right. Of course, if you work for yourself, you may never retire. And in other countries, the retirement age might be quite different. All right. So this is some essential vocabulary that you need to be able to talk about your business life, your working life, your career. All right. If you'd like to do a quiz on this subject, please go to our website, www.ingvid.com. Thank you very much for watching and good luck with your career. Bye for now.